All right, good morning, students. You're on to grade 8 mathematics. And then today we'll be looking at an aspect of maths that talks about geometry, but not just geometry, but mensuration. Now, geometry as an aspect of maths is concerned with two key areas. One, there's what we call formal geometry, that is establishing principles by what is called deductions. And there's another aspect of geometry that talks about what? Mensuration. I'll write the spelling on the board. Mensuration, from the word measurements. And what are the things you can measure? You can measure length, you can measure area, and you can measure volume. So these are the three things you can measure. Whether you call it length, whether you call it breadth, whether you call it height, they all fall under length. So you can measure length, or essentially, let's upgrade it a little, we'll call it perimeter. You can measure perimeter, you can measure area, and you can measure volume. You can't measure perimeter if the figure is not closed. And if the figure is not closed, then it's not a shape. How many types of shapes do we have? Two. A shape is said to either be plane or what? Solid. For instance, by description, a sheet of paper is a plane shape. And this thing I'm holding here, which is a marker, is by description a cylinder. You get it? So these are foundational ideas you must have as we come into the topic of cylinder and cone. So we'll start off with, I would not want to spread so much, but narrow it down. And if need be, I'll bring ideas that you should have had or remind you of things you should have known before this topic. So what then is a cylinder? We'll take the first shape, cylinder. The first thing I would expect you to do when I ask you what you know about a cylinder is that, one, you should be able to draw it. You should be able to draw the cylinder. That's the first thing I would expect you to do. Now, in this aspect of maths, the diagram is the most important thing. That's why you must draw. So very quickly, I want everybody to draw a cylinder in his or her notebook. A cylinder is simply two circles. That's a cylinder. A cylinder is formed from essentially a folded a rectangle. So a cylinder, if it's open at both ends, it's a folded rectangle. Let's see if we can illustrate that practically. This is a rectangle. This is a rectangle. If I fold it, some people will say roll it. Essentially, the shape I'm going to get will be a cylinder. This is a cylinder. Open at both ends. Is that clear? Opened at both ends. And this is what will bring you to an idea. You will hear things like surface area and total surface area. When you hear surface area, essentially we are concerned with the rectangle forming that shape. Because you're going to see very soon that some of those formulas you're cramming, you really need not cram them. They are basic things you should have known. So this is what a cylinder looks like. So we will go straight ahead. This is what is called an open cylinder. A cylinder where I can see look at from one end and see out through the other end. So that is an open cylinder. So let's go. So from the cylinder I've drawn, you discover that the net, we call it the net, So the net of a cylinder is called a rectangle. So I want you to have on your note, maybe an area of your note where you note things about a cylinder. Can you just write that quickly? Things about a cylinder. You need to know this. Things about a cylinder. Keep the title very simple and don't bother about things about a cylinder. Maybe I should write my things about a cylinder. Number one, it is a solid shape. That's number one. It is what? A solid shape. That's number one. Number two, it is formed from a rectangle. It is formed from a rectangle if open. It is formed, okay, let's change the attenuation now. It is formed from a rectangle if opened. You know, the way I put my statements would tell whether I want to say something else. Let's assume I don't want to say anything else. It is formed from a rectangle if opened. So by extension, on that same second sentence, write the net of a cylinder is a rectangle. Is a rectangle. So if the cylinder is closed, what do I need to do? I'll just make another circle, use it to cover here, and make another circle, use it to do what? Cover here. That's it. So a closed cylinder. So next one, number three. A closed cylinder has three faces. A closed cylinder has three faces, two circles of same radius, two circles of same radius, and a folded rectangle. Two radius, two circles of same radius, and a folded rectangle. Full stop. And a folded rectangle. Full stop. Number three information you must take or you must note. Okay, let me go over number two again. What did I say? If it's closed, what happens? It's made up of two circles and a folded rectangle. Number three, there are three key measurements that can be made. There are three key measurements that can be made from a cylinder. Three key measurements that can be made from a cylinder. Number one, what are the three key measurements that can be made from a cylinder? Surface area. Number two, total surface area. And number three, volume. These are the three key measurements you can make of a cylinder. Surface area, total surface area, and what? Volume. So let's start. Let's start. So let's start with the basic ideas we've already had. Area of a circle is what? Pi r squared. Is that not? I hope nobody is in doubt about that. The area of a circle is pi r squared. Now, what is the area of a rectangle? Area of a rectangle is equal to what? Length times breadth. Is that not? Good. Now, watch carefully. You discover that either the breadth side or the length side is what is used to form a circle. So what is the length? What is the length or the perimeter of a circle? Is what? 2 pi r. So it means that, look at this carefully, look at this. Let me draw this on the board. If I use this side to form the circle, I'm going to have something like this. Is that not? So what I'm saying now, the circumference of this one, let me call it C. The circumference of this will be equal to the length of this part. So if that is true, it will mean that the length of rectangle will be equal to the circumference of what? Circle. So the length of the circle is L. The length of the rectangle is L. The circumference of the circle is what? 2 pi r. Now, follow me closely. The breadth of the rectangle will be equal to the height of the cylinder. Somebody is asking, Uncle, how is that possible? Look at it now. After I folded it, the length becomes the base of the cylinder. Now, this breadth will now be what will form the height of this cylinder. I seen it. So what means is that B will now be equal to H. So what then is the surface area? So the surface area of the cylinder must then be equal to the area of the rectangle. Must then be equal to the area of the rectangle. So what does that mean? Now we said that there are 3 measurements we can have. So this is the first measurement, because sometimes the formula you are trying to memorize is something you can derive yourself. So the surface area of the cylinder is, okay, let's start with the area of the rectangle, is length times breadth. What is length? 2 pi r. What is the breadth? H. So that's how we say that the surface area of cylinder is essentially equal to what? 2 pi r/h. So that's how that formula came about. The surface area of a cylinder is what? The circumference of the base of the cylinder times the height of the cylinder. So that's it for the surface area of a cylinder. So maybe we should take a question or two before we continue. We just read the surface area. So I want to take a question or two before we now take it. Let's look at exercise 19B. Exercise 19B. Exercise 19B. Question number 1. Calculate the surface area of a cylindrical container with this dimension. Are you seeing that page 170 of your textbook? So based on what I've taught you now, I want everybody to attend question 1A and tell me your answer. Exercise 19B, question 1A. Everybody do it. I'll await your answer. Okay, so what you now have is calculate the surface area. Now take note, the radius arrow is equal to 30 cm. The height is equal to 36 cm. The surface area, curved, now they call it curved surface area. When I say curved surface area or surface area, you're still talking about this thing. So curved surface area. See where I've written it? Have you seen it? CSA. Have you seen it? So you can write that CSA will be equal to 2 pi ROH 2 times. Now, please be careful here. You are told to use take pi as well, 3.41. 3.41. Okay. What's the radius? 30. What's the height? 36. So what will be your answer? Take it gradually. Take it what? Gradually. I'll multiply this with this, or you can multiply this with this. So I'll have 6.28 times 100 and 1000. I think that should be that. Then you multiply. Move on decimal here. This is the same thing as 62.8 times 108. So let's multiply that. That'll give me 4. That'll give me 6. That'll give me 8. That'll give me, okay, this space might not be okay for that. So maybe I need to take a bigger area. So that'll give me 4 to carry of 1 is 16, that's 8, carry of 1, 7. So with the limitation of errors, that's what I should have. And then my answer becomes what? 1 decimal place, so it will be here. 6.782 point what? 4 centimeter squared. Usually, all right, thank you very much, Alex and Alex. So that's essentially what you are going to get for that. And because of the nature of the timing we have, I'll believe that as soon as I get to this point, you should be able to finish that one up. Okay, so I want to try you. What about if you were given the diameter? Because sometimes it's easy to solve when you have radius. So let's see when you are giving diameter. Let's see those of us that will be smart enough to handle this. So let's all do exercise 19B, question 1E. Question 1E. Let's all do question 1E. So let's look at that example now and see if we can get it, that question, see if we can get it done. Right. Now, in the case of that one, 1E of that text exercise, diameter is given as 10 cm. So what would radius be? 10 divided by 2, that would be 5 cm. The length is also the height. Do you understand? If for a cylinder, the length is also the height. So take note of that. So that will be equal to 18 cm. So what is the curved surface area? Curved surface area will be equal to 2 pi ROH. 2 times 3.14 times radius 5 times what? 18. Are we together? All right, so you multiply out. What does that give you? Now, the trick here is to know what you multiply. 5 times 18 is 90. 90 times 2 is what? 180. So that's 180 times 3.14. So I'll do that. So that will give you, if I've done my 2 decimal points, so that will give me 565.2 centimeters squared. Very important you add that. All right, so that's that for that. So we come to the next idea, the idea of total surface area. The idea of total surface area. We said that for total surface area, we imagine a solid cylinder. And what does it mean for a cylinder to be solid? It means that both ends are covered. Both ends are what? Covered. So if you look at the shape of a cylinder, maybe I should clean off this other end. Look at the shape of a cylinder. Look at the shape of a cylinder. What you have is, now this is a cylinder, this is circle, this is circle. What's the area of circle? Pi r squared. Plus, what's the curved surface area? So the total surface area is actually the curved surface area plus the area of the 2 circles indicated in the diagram. All right, so with that settled, we can now begin to look for what the total surface area of any shape would be. And to help us illustrate that idea, we will look at question 4. Question 4a. Let's use question 4a to do that. Question 4a. Question 4a. So 4a will be used to handle that idea. Question 4a. Please make sure you draw the diagram. You really must draw the diagram. This is 20, and this is 7. So the radius is 7. The height. Now, some people will say, Uncle, but it is, the reason why they use length is because it's slipping. So either the height or the length is what? 20. All right. So the total surface area will be equal to what? 2 pi r h plus 2 pi r squared. So that will give me what? 2 times 22 over 7 times 7 times 20 on the one hand, plus, I don't have enough space here, that's why I'm writing under here. Okay, let's see if this space can take what I want to do. 2 times 22 over 7 times 7 squared. Now, this will go with this, and your final answer will become what? 44 times 20, 44 times 20 plus 7 go here 1. 7 into the index is 1 because there are 2 7s here. So that will be what? 2 times 22 times 7. So that will give me 8 here plus 44 times 7. That will give me 308. You can confirm these answers later, and this will give me 1,188. Oh, I got that right. Centimeter squared. So that's that for the area. So that's the total surface area of that figure. I'll much later drop your assignment on Google Classroom, and you go there to look at the questions I want you to solve. I'll take care of that maybe much later, and you go to that classroom and attend to what you need to. All right, so that's for this. Just give us a moment or two to settle on that, because we have to clear cylinder today. And that'll be the last question we'll solve, and afterwards I'll give you selected assignments to handle. All right, so let's look at that. So what is the question saying? In question 19C, exercise 19C number 1, calculate the volume of a cylindrical steel bar which is 8 cm long. That is height. When they say a cylinder is 8 cm long, that refers to the height. And what? Diameter is what? 3.5 cm. You have to convert this to improper fraction, and that will be what? 7/2. Now, what would the radius be? The radius will be 7/2 divided by 2, and that will be 7/4. Please, because you are going to be cancelling out, it's best to keep your figure this way. I hope nobody is having issues with why this is 7/4. Remember, we have taught you that this is a true denominator. A denominator in a numerator is itself a denominator. I have really taken out time for the 1 year I've taught you to drive these points to you. So I don't expect any question from here. All right. So volume will be equal to area pi r squared times height. What is pi? 22/7. What is radius? Radius is 7/4. So you write 7/4 twice. Still the same thing. Keep it simple. Times, what is the height? 8. I seen that. So you cancel out. When you're canceling out, you cancel out what you have spotted. This here 1, this here 2, this here 1, this here 2, this here 1, this here 11. 7 here 1, 7 here 1. That will give me 11 times 7, and that will be 77 centimeter cube. So that's what the volume would be. That's what the volume would be, 77 cm cube. Right, so that's that for volume, and